I'm sentimental about archiving these things, so thank you for that. Thank you all for being here. By way of context, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Ken Goodman. I direct the University of Miami's Institute for Bioethics and Health Policy. This is the 199th dialogue in research ethics that we have provided. I see Dr. Altman on my left-hand corner. He and Larry Fishman were among the real brains of the outfit. And if you can see behind me, with an abundance of sentiment, I don't normally like backgrounds, but this is Dr. Fishman on September 18th, 1992, leading the first of these dialogues. That was 3 decades ago. So part of this is driven by strategy, but a whole lot more by sentiment. I wanted to share just at the beginning that if it weren't for the likes of the Altmans and the Fishmans of our institution, we would not have an ethics institute. It's as simple as that. The people I reached out to when I arrived said, you know, some people said, you're nice, good luck, let me know if we can help. Others, like Drs. Altman and Fishman, said, you're nice, we like you, let me know what I can do to help. And by the way, you need this. The phone number we have today for the Ethics Institute, ending 5723, was created in comparative pathology by Norm Altman 29 years ago. The first office we had was in the VA, in the research sector, Dr. Jackson, started 29 years ago. In the intervening 30 years, you may have read, and if you see the obituary I wrote, there's reference to the blue index cards. I received, I don't even see it, it's the background. I saved these. This is either a sentiment, perhaps a behavioral disorder on my part. I saved what I call my blue Fishmans. Ken, I thought you'd appreciate this well-written piece, maybe of interest, deals with ethics on a grand scale. There's a stack of them, I saved them all. For those, and that was because he thought what we were doing was interesting and important. Fortunately, it was bidirectional. One of the things that Dr. Fishman reminded me of is the importance of the VA's research mission to veterans. And the work he did, the scientific work he did, advanced the care of veterans. I don't know if y'all saw this. I'm going to kill the background. Please note Dr. Fishman there. I don't like these things because they make you look like a oh, so that's not what I want to do. They make you look like a ghost. Choose filter. I'm going to go to none. This is going to make it a lot easier to do this. No, none didn't work. Bear with me just a moment. Bear with me just a moment. Where's the none here? There's the none. Okay. I hope I can show this to you. This, you may recognize the name of this journal. This is a Festschrift that was done, a commemorative issue that someone hacked, devoted to Lawrence M. Fishman, MD, with articles by a number of people, including Gus Godoy. I don't know if Gus is here yet. Including Dr. Eliseo Perestable. Many of you remember the chief of staff at the chief CMO at VA for many, many years. Dr. Perestable and Barry Matterson, among others, did a lot of important work in hypertension. And they all work together. And what I learned from Dr. Fishman was something that I try and signal every year for our annual conference. The next one, by the way, is April 9th. It'll be also the 29th annual bioethics conference. It emerged from a small meeting, well, 29 years ago, into what I can look you in the eye and say is probably the largest and oldest community bioethics conference in the United States of America. And the first sponsor of it was the VA Miami, thanks to Dr. Larry Fishman. And so you will, I assume, forgive me for an abundance of sentiment. What I say every year at that conference is something like the following. I hope, Dr. Jackson, you can use this. Any country that has enough money to make new veterans better find the resources to take care of the ones it already has. And that's a signal for support for the VA and its medical mission. And what Dr. Fishman tried to do was say, well, you know, you're not going to, it would be inapt for the VA research mission to study diseases that veterans don't have. Now that's evolved over the years, given the number of women veterans we have, and I think that's an interesting scientific challenge. But I wanted to begin, and I'm going to be asking Dr. Jackson Dr. Schuyler and Gus, if we get them here. Somebody's on 5692. Who would that be, please? Oh, in any case, they'll answer.
Hello. Hi. Gus Godoy is on the line. This is his
Okay,
daughter.
I'm here.
And thanks, Gus. And so against that background, against the background of Dr. Fishman's contributions to our institute, his work along with Norm Altman to get us started, his sustenance over the years, his commitment to the VA research mission, you will forgive me for having begun the way I have. I'd like, in the following order, to ask Doctors Jackson, Schuyler, and Godoy to share some reflections, and especially on it's ultimately an ethical issue. Why ought we to use our resources, our tax resources, to do research in support of veterans? Dr. Jackson, thank you so very much for being here. Dr. Robert Jackson is Dr. Fishman's heir to this important role. And Bob, I'm really glad you're here. Thanks so much. Please share your thoughts.
No, I appreciate your letting me do this, and I do appreciate having the opportunity to meet and work with Dr. Fishman for a very short time, actually. So I'll tell you a little bit about me and how I got into the VA job I'm in now and what Dr. Fishman's role was in that, and also later tell you a little bit about where our VA research program stands now and what we plan to do in the near future. So basically, I came here to the Miami VA in 2003 from UAB. I was at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, doing both basic research and clinical medicine, and had been a professor there in pulmonary medicine, was sort of looking for other opportunities. I actually, in fact, had done my residency at Jackson UM in the late 1970s and early 1980s, so I was well acquainted with this and was really anxious to come back, I think. And I actually was recruited to this position by Dr. Fishman, along with Dr. Warner and Gus Godoy, who's on the call now. He was prominent in that recruitment effort, and I do appreciate that. Gus, to this day, I mean, you were very kind and very active in getting me down here, so I appreciate that. One of the reasons I think I was somewhat attractive, perhaps, to Dr. Fishman and the rest of the committee was my research mentor when I was in training was actually Donald Massaro, who was a very prominent VA investigator in the field of lung research and surfactant metabolism in the late 70s, early 80s. And I think he had a relationship with Dr. Fishman, which kind of facilitated Dr. Fishman's looking at me, really. So I think that's an important thing about mentorship. So when I got here, it was sort of an interesting culture shock change, I guess, from Birmingham. I really hadn't been in an administrative position before, so there was a very steep and very treacherous learning curve, which I think I got through. It took some time and effort and some failures along the way, but when I arrived here, I do remember that Dr. Fishman and Gus Godoy very carefully briefed me. They produced a nice big briefing book, just like you would give the President of the United States, and had all of the issues in there that I needed to know about and needed to act on. And perhaps I think the most important briefing I got was from Dr. Fishman very early after I got here. He basically said, you know, they're going to bring a lot of things to you to sign, so just sign them. And that is what I've continued to do. And I think that's been very good advice. So after getting here and getting settled a little bit, you know, the road was not incredibly smooth initially. We did have some problems with the physical plant, the safety program, and some of our IRB processes that got worked out with time and external reviews, and those were painful, but I think they eventually helped us improve the program and move it forward. And one of the things I appreciate most about Dr. Fishman is that he really fostered the relationship between the university and the VA. And I personally believe that is critically important, and we need to work on that every day. I think that's one of our problems here at the university now and at the VA, that we sort of lost contact with each other. But he was obviously very deeply involved with the Department of Medicine. I remember early on, he would take me to Department of Medicine faculty meetings, and obviously was totally committed to his VA position, both in endocrinology and in research. So he was epitomized, a joint appointee who had research interests, which is really what the VA research program is all about. At that time, John Clarkson was the dean, and we actually met periodically with him and had a good relationship in what we called joint affiliation partnership committee meetings. And by the way, those have gone by the wayside. We don't have those any longer. I think it would be great to reinstitute those if we could. We do have a research foundation here. We had some issues with the research foundation that we worked out, one of which was an embezzlement that we had to live through and get through. And Gus helped us tremendously in getting through that with minor damages, some dings along the way, but not really anything fatal. And that organization has grown and expanded over the past few years, such that now we have a $3 to $4 million research portfolio in that organization alone, totally independent of VA appropriated funds. So later, during the tenure of Dr. Goldschmidt, we continued to have, I think, fairly good relations with the university. We met with him periodically. I think he was interested. I actually reported directly to him on the VA research program every few months. And I think he was interested in that. But as I say, I think recently the institutions have drifted apart. And there are reasons for that, some of which I understand, some of which I don't totally understand. One issue is that VA research funding has always been used as a tool to recruit junior investigators, usually on the assistant professor level, into the university and let them develop a research program under less sort of busy clinical conditions and then go on to get NIH funding and get promoted at the university. So it's actually become much more difficult to get VA funding in the past few years. So now the VA pay line is very similar to that of the NIH. The other limiting factor with the VA research program, and this is either good or bad, depending how you look at it, is the VA is really very focused on post-deployment issues. So those take a very high priority, and much of the research done in the VA now is no longer investigator initiated, but rather directed by RFAs looking at things like Gulf War illness and other post-deployment issues. So that's actually limited our ability to use VA grant funding to recruit faculty to the university. I don't have a good solution to that problem, and I wish I did, but we'll continue obviously to try to recruit junior faculty as best we can, because I think that is the best way to provide excellent care at the VA. So as I said, the foundation that we have is a nonprofit research foundation. It's now led by Dr. Katrina Washburn, and she's really doing a fantastic job at running that. In fact, it has in fact become a national model so that now people come to us and look at the way we manage that research foundation. She actually has a leadership position in the National Association of VA Research Foundations. So that is a flexible source of funding. We've actually accumulated some funding now that we can use perhaps for seed grants and for startup funds and to support educational efforts, like Dr. Goodman had in the past with the ethics meetings. Recently, also, the Miami VA has received national recognition for our participation and activity in COVID-related research. So we've been a very active site in terms of developing therapeutics and testing vaccines for COVID, and this has been actually recognized in national publications. We recently just closed yesterday, in fact, the Novavax vaccine trial with 143 patients that we accumulated in just 2 weeks. So that was a tremendous effort on the part of the investigators here, and obviously part of Operation Warp Speed. We have basic research that's been funded for COVID-19 as well. Dr. Carrie Bernstein has a new merit review actually to do that research, and hopefully we'll collaborate with her because it involves alveolar cells in the lung, which are the ones that are infected, in fact, by the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So to get back to Dr. Fishman, what I really think most about him was he was very interested in other people and very overtly honored other people with recognition and support. He maintained a community of scholars here, which we try very hard to continue maintaining, but it, it is a difficult issue. And I think the way he did that was by sharing resources. One of his policies was, described as socialism, essentially, in which he would tax everyone's grants so that there would be a common fund, so that if one were between grants, they could continue their work using the funds of the other investigators. And that was a very important thing. So as funding has become more difficult, it's been more difficult for us to do that, although we do continue to try to that. But he always shared his wealth and his resources in a way that was extremely generous.
Dr. Jackson, let me just suggest that sharing is not necessarily socialism.
Right.
When we take care of ourselves and we take care of our colleagues and we take care of our patients, that's just the way civil society works.
No, some would characterize it that way. That's what I said. So I agree completely. So just briefly, in terms of the VA research program, as I'm sure you all know, it's been responsible for 3 Nobel Prizes. We actually have one of the living Nobel laureates here at the Miami VA, Andrew Shalley, who's still very active. The other Nobel Prizes were for development of radioimmunoassay and for discovery of nitric oxide, both really fundamental advances in science. We are now going to become a part of the lung cancer personalized medicine group, which involves the Tampa VA, the Bay Pines VA, and the Miami VA. So we will be a regional center for precision oncology, essentially. So genetically directed therapies in lung cancer. We will be one of the lead centers in that. And this is national funding that's coming from the R&D Research Office to us in recognition of both our research and our clinical programs. That's going to be a huge advantage for us and for veterans who have lung cancer, obviously. And it'll be a 5-year program, which is going to be fully funded by ORD. So we're very looking forward to that. For those of you who don't know, the VA research program does most of the rehabilitation and prosthetic research in the United States. NIH does, in fact, very little. If you look at the website, you'll see there are essentially no grants in rehabilitation at NIH. They're all VA. There have been many, very useful, pragmatic discoveries from the VA research program, like nicotine patches, CT scanners, cardiac pacemakers, and more recently advances in lung disease related to burn pit exposure. And by the way, one of the major research programs we have here involves Gulf War illness, which is a nationally recognized program. We have several grants. The PI for that is Dr. Nancy Klimas, and she's very actively involved in those environmental medicine issues. So with that, I just want to say one further thing, and that is we are actually building a new research building. We have $20 million to do that. We finished the design phase of it. It's going to look like this, if you can see it. So it'll be attached to the existing research building and will give us another 20 to 25,000 square feet of nice open bay, state-of-the-art laboratory space. So to reiterate what Dr. Goodman said, obviously we want to support veterans' health. That is what the VA research program does. It is a national priority for the VA. But over and above that, any discovery that we do make is applicable to the nation as a whole. So I do think, we serve a useful purpose in that way.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. I don't know how you draw a line from an initiative that begins decades ago to the betterment of an individual veteran's life, but surely what you just documented is how we do it. We can't connect the dots, sometimes even after the fact. But when you do research, well, I think it was an endocrinologist who said something on the order of, and if I'm not mistaken, and Dr. Schuyler will correct me, there's a plaque on the wall of the Diabetes Research Institute that says that research is the way you ensure that the future is different and better than the past. Something like that. I'd like to quote that a lot. Dr. Fishman did a lot of work in the adrenal gland. In fact, there was a time, precious few of us remember this now. Was one of the places where endocrinology. Well, if you all remember, Jay, do you know Max McKenzie, former chairman of medicine? right? So this was the World Series of endocrinology, and Larry was part of that initiative. And then along come scientists and clinicians like Dr. Schuyler, who worked closely with him and advanced that science. And I was hoping, Jay, that you wouldn't mind one, sharing a few thoughts about your work and its relation to it by way of homage to Dr. Fishman.
I really appreciate the opportunity, Ken. Larry was very creative. He really, in creating the VA Research Foundation, gave a method for what Dr. Jackson pointed out, the sharing of resources and the ability to do things beyond what the VA grants allowed, and was very flexible with that. But he also was flexible in helping us find space in the VA, first for the Behavioral Medicine Research Center, which I was co-director of, along with Neil Schneiderman, and then for the General Clinical Research Center, which previously had been at Jackson. And one of the problems that was pointed out to us during a site visit was, well, you weren't doing enough wide range of research at the Jackson GCRC. And I remember going with Dean Fogel to meet at NIH with them to point out, and we brought a map of the campus, Dr. Goodwin from the Sylvester, I'm blanking, Jerry Goodwin went with us. The three of us went up and we pointed out that the map of the campus, that the hepatology was over here, and the cancer was over here, and the diabetes was over here, and we were all doing GCRC related research, but we weren't necessarily admitting the patients to Jackson. And we convinced that when we went back in after having lost a grant for a couple of years, that we would try to centralize things. And we created a GCRC where the prime location for inpatient was at the VA through Dr. Fishman's innovative way of approaching things. And we had secondary locations in a couple places on campus. And we were able to get a GCRC back that way because of his creativity, first with the Behavioral Medicine Research Center, and then adjacent to it, the GCRC. And those I think were things which advanced the research mission on the campus as a whole in a monumental kind of way. And that was Larry's creative thinking. The other thing which he did, and with his wife Sue, was he endowed a visiting professor in endocrinology lectureship. He did that while I was the division chief. And the first person to come as a Fishman visiting professor was Andrew Shalley, who Dr. Jackson mentioned. At the time, he was still at the New Orleans VA, but he had come here in 2005, and it was later in that year that Hurricane Katrina destroyed the VA in New Orleans. And because of having just been here and interacting with us, Dr. Fishman creatively thought maybe we could get him to relocate his lab to Miami. And in fact, he did. And that's how we ended up with a Nobel laureate, not only on the campus of the overall medical center, but specifically at the VA. And those were the kinds of creative ways that Larry approached things, and was really a very flexible mind in that regard. In the Fishman visiting professor in 2008 was Bob Rizza from the Mayo Diabetes Center. And although Bob had done some work in the adrenal and talked about some of that, his main interest over the years was in diabetes. And we, which was not really Larry's interest. And so what Larry and Sue said is they're going to expand the Fishman lectureship series to alternate on a yearly basis from general endocrinology, which would be the Fishman lecturers in the odd years, to diabetes related people, which he named after me, which would be the Schuyler visiting professor in the even years. And this distinguished lectureship series has continued alternating that way since that time. Since the first one in 2005, we just had the week that Dr. Fishman died, Sam Klein from the Washington University in St. Louis as the 2021 Fishman visiting lecturer. And this one happened to be on the same kind of Zoom that we're doing this call because of COVID. But, it continued to this day. And Ernesto Bernal, our current division chief, met with Dr. Fishman in selecting Dr. Klein as the Fishman visiting professor for 2021. And he has participated in the selection of all of the Fishman and Schuyler lectureships. Unfortunately, he won't be able to do that anymore with his demise, but he's done it from the beginning of the series and has really brought a number of really renowned people to our campus or to virtually this year for that purpose. And it was really a forward-thinking thing to do that. And the first couple of them, I mentioned Andrew Shalley. The second one was Dan Fetterman. Dan Fetterman was a distinguished endocrinologist from Mass General in Boston and deputy dean of Harvard Medical School, who then, on his retirement, relocated to spend part-time in Miami, lived down the street from me here on Key Biscayne, and was a great contributor to the school in general. And it was really Larry who had a great deal to do with that. And so there's many things that Larry has done over the years. He was a mentor to Robert Sackstein, the current dean of FIU Medical School. Robert worked with him and Mary Epstein as a high school student. And Robert always gives credit to both of them as having, so much to influence his career. And he was anxious to come home to Miami, where he grew up, to become the dean of FIU. And I've known him for a long time because his mother was my son's piano teacher, even when he was 5 years old. And he's 38 now. So we've known the Sacksteins for a long time. And he had me as a visitor in Boston on a few occasions. And so, and every time we talk about Larry Fishman and how much Larry Fishman meant to his career. So I'll stop there, but I just want to say his tentacles have created so much. And actually, it was he who helped recruit Bernie Roos to come to the Miami VA, and that created a geriatric clinical research and education center. And that which still exists to this day, I think. It was his creativity in getting the right people lined up which allowed that to happen. So I just think his contributions to our division, to our school, to the VA, and to the community at large have been outstanding, and a guy who we will truly miss.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Schuyler. I should say your metaphor is a really good one, because sometimes you can use a tentacle to grab. He used his to support. And evidence of that support is in the director of an ethics institute. What's that about? How did he manage to do as much as he did across our institutions? And it's really noteworthy. As those of you who know that Drs. Fishman and Gus Godoy were inseparable for, Gus, I don't know how long, but I'm hoping you might share a few thoughts about what it was like to work with them and how you enjoyed contributing to the healthcare of veterans.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Fishman recruited me from all places at the VA research of Augusta, Georgia. And he brought me in, and immediately we knew, that we're very compatible. I was really amazed with Dr. Fishman, his organization skills, and how he can put together. And always in mind was VA research and the university. One thing that wasn't mentioned that I thought that Dr. Fishman did a lot of it is he founded the Hispanic Center for Health Services Research over Miami and San Juan. And the VA at that time was very, very interested about creating such a center here in Miami and Puerto Rico. And it was amazing how this thing took off. He also, during the AIDS epidemic, he also founded a center, primarily founded by the foundation to support AIDS research here in Miami and the VA. And I tell you, he was an amazing individual when it came to organizing skills. He did so much for so many people, you know, and always on a quiet way. You know, people have to come in and say, wow, what an amazing situation here in Miami. And they were very proud. The thing with Charlie, perfect example. We brought in Dr. Shally as a visiting professor for the first lecture that Jay Schuyler set up. Actually, was to replace a founding situation that Dr. Fishman had with it was the Upjohn visiting professor thing, and they named it then the Larry Fishman visiting professor, and turned out to be that Andrew Shally was the first speaker for that thing. I helped Dr. Shally tour through the campus and everything. He was very, very impressed with Miami. And he actually, even before he came here, he said, and he asked me if in a few while, before he retired and everything, if he could come to Miami and do research here in Miami. Like it turned out to be, a few years later, Katrina hit New Orleans and destroyed the VA in New Orleans. And I remember getting a call in the middle of the night from Dr. Shally saying to rescue him, that he wanted to come to Miami and continue his research. And we organized it, you know, that Dr. Shally moved from New Orleans up to Miami. Actually, he didn't have a place to go and everything. He was a widower. He didn't have any family. And I housed him in my house for something like 6 months until we found him a place that he could go in. We found lab space for him. We went to New Orleans, brought in all his equipment up to Miami, and he continued his research with very, very little disruption. And again, through the efforts of Dr. Fishman that made it possible for Dr. Shally to come here and continue his research and continue support from the VA. So he was just an amazing, amazing man. And I tell you, I love him. He carried me through, and I received a lot of accolades that really belong to Dr. Fishman. So I benefit tremendously from being with Dr. Fishman.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Dr. Fishman retired. I followed him. We brought in Dr. Jackson, and everything seemed all right, but always with the name of Larry Fishman right on top.
Gus, you've been very generous. I think what a lot of us would also want to point out is that a lot of what he was able to accomplish, a lot of that creativity, a lot of the successes by virtue of lateral thinking, he relied on you. And you were able to, your contributions were I think he was in part as effective as he was because he had someone he could trust like Gus Godoy. I assume that's uncontroversial. Ethics is very often about controversial things. We haven't had anything controversial today, and I think that's probably a relief for most of us. What I've learned, it's taken me far too long to learn it, is that institutions and people find resources for things they value. Everyone in this call, everyone in our institutions has asked for something from some boss and been told no. And I do this now myself, right? You find resources for things you value. What Larry valued was really quite diverse, however, and he put his shoulder to the wheel over and over and over again. We're talking about growth in VA research. We're talking about science in the endocrine system. We're talking about ethics at our institutions. And that was because when you think that way, and the way that Gus just described, something important, many important things can happen. Other thoughts about, once again, this is a dialogue in research ethics, and I'm sort of using poetic license here to turn it into a bit of a festschrift among friends. Any other thoughts or observations, especially as regards the role of the important role of the VA, the moral obligation of both the VA and our duties to support it when it comes to research and care?
I'll just make one comment if I could, because Dr. Jackson, I believe it was mentioned, or somebody mentioned Eliseo Perez Stable, who had been chief of medicine at the VA. And it's interesting to point out that his son, Eliseo Perez Stable, I think they had to share a middle name, so he wasn't quite a junior, but his name was also Eliseo, is at the University of California in San Francisco, at San Francisco General Hospital there. And he had a paper in JAMA last year about ethics. It was about COVID-19 and racial ethnic disparities and the problems that we need to address with that if we're going to be ethical in getting COVID taken care of amongst all kinds of people. And so there is an ethical connection there, Ken, that runs through.
And Jay, thank you for that. It turns out Eliseo Hijo is actually moved on. He is now the director of the National Institutes of Health Institute on Minority Health and Health Disparities. And I think that was the JAMA piece you mentioned. I think was written after he took that after that position. And in fact, we ought to get him back here to do maybe he'll be our next dialogue. To talk about research and disparities and that sort of thing. I think that'd be a good idea. Good, but thank you for that observation, Jay. It's the anastomoses that Larry has forged between and among all kinds of different systems and people has been really extraordinary. And I think Dr. Perez-Stable, Sr., relied on him a great deal in the same way that Dr. DeGennaro relies on Dr. Jackson now. Other comments or thoughts?
Just one other comment, Ken, if I may.
Please.
Dr. Perez-Stable's other son, Carlos, is actually an NIH-funded investigator here at the VA to this day, so he's around as well.
A fair point. And in fact, he used to be on, if I'm not mistaken, he was on either the Animal Care and Use Committee or the IRB for the VA many years ago. Carlos was.
He's still active in the animal care. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
God, what a small world. And in fact, his daughter was for many years at FIU. I want to thank you all for this. I want to, if you'll indulge me, a bit of a quote. This is something that in announcing, and we will end with this unless someone objects, with my final reflections. In a 2009 announcement of the J.S. Schuyler Visiting Professorship in Diabetes and Metabolism, endowed by Dr. Fishman and his wife, Suzanne, he said, quote, while he's doing all of this, he's expressing gratitude. I am very grateful to the university and the medical school for my professional life. I've been very blessed in a professional way and have had some wonderful colleagues. I've had the opportunity to take care of patients, to teach, to do research in a stimulating and developing medical center. He viewed our medical center as a partnership among three great institutions: the Veterans Administration, the Public Health Trust, and the university. If we can use that to leverage your vision, Dr. Jackson, then count us in. This is, as I say, half sentiment and half strategy. Larry Fishman and Norman Altman were essential in the evolution of this institute. We would not be here without them. What I hope Larry knew was how much I valued it. That we do these celebrations afterward are no substitute for reminding people while we're looking at them how much what they've done means to us. And on that note, absent anything else, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you all for helping us remember a dear friend and colleague and the contributions he made to a population, well, we still have wars and therefore we still have veterans. And therefore that mission is as important as ever. Thank you all for being here and stay tuned for future dialogues in research ethics. It's been a privilege.
Thank you. Thank you for organizing it.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Norman.